Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Vanessa today with us. She is a preeminent thought leader towards advancing discipline of space medicine, an American citizen of Greek descent and a medical doctor. Dr. Vanessa is well-known colloquial and is on track to become Greece's first ever astronaut in history. She is a scuba diver, pilot in training, and a skydiver. As the and managing partner of Space Exploration Strategies LLC, Dr. Dr. Vanessa's impressive bona fides include in advanced degrees in biology, genetics, astronomy, astrophysics, and business leadership. She has authored and co-authored a plethora of articles advocating for advancements in her field of expertise, and her deep experience with radiation exposure and protection have made her a after advisor on high-end programs of note for the gravitas she brings to the discussion. Additionally, her fluency in 18 languages are the testament to her ability to engage with a broad range of audiences, and thus she continues to serve as a keynote speaker at numerous fora to include the prestigious King College in London, England, and many other universities internationally. She is also one of the space ambassadors for NSS USA. And without wasting any further time, I would like of Dr. Vanessa to take over the platform and continue with this very important topic today.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invite. Um, Disclaimer, I'm really sorry. I'm quite sick. Yesterday I didn't have a voice at all. Today I do have some, so we're going to use it because I'm really, really excited to be here. The point today is to give you a little bit of an overview of what we know until today for mental health and a few key things that we might be able to be doing further from now on um, to protect our astronauts' mental health in space. The goal is to give the floor to um, questions afterwards so that we have a nice discussion. So thank you so much for having me, and without further ado, let's go for it. If you could, to the organizers, if you could please monitor the chat so that we have.
Yes,
There we
we
go.
are here. Yeah,
So that we have an interactive experience. All right.
sure.
So I can only hear you. I cannot see you. Very well. So what we're going to go over is, what does being in space mean? The psychology and sociology in space, and what we know until today. Space conditions and their influence on mental and behavioral health. What it would mean to be going to the ISS, and what it means to do deep space travel, like going to Mars and further. Then we're going to briefly touch on an interesting topic which has to do with crew size. And then we're going to conclude with how we should choose our crews. All right, now think about this. You have been preparing for 5, maybe even 10 years for this very moment through extraneous exercises and extreme conditions that put your body to the test. Not just your body, but also your mental health and your experiences and your brain. And that moment comes and you're boosted off and you're off the atmosphere, and you're really shocked at the beginning because if it's your first time, you have, regardless of how much training you've had, you have never experienced that particular sensation of those tons and tons of fuel burning right behind your back. So before the first seconds of scare, you actually realize that, oh, I'm outside of the atmosphere. I can feel the microgravity. And the first thing you do is to look outside the window and you see your planet, your home, and how there's this little tiny atmosphere that protects it. And it's this air of fragility that it gives out. How you're starting to think how all your problems, your happy moments, your sad moments, your greatest and worst experiences are protected underneath this teeny tiny layer. And all of a sudden, you have a shift, an idea that maybe there's a grand scheme of things. Maybe you are so small, but at the same time, so important to protect this home of yours. And this phenomenon has been described by 100% of the astronauts. And it has a name, and it's called the overview effect. So the overview effect is a cognitive shift in awareness, um, that while you're viewing Earth from outer space. And actually, Michael Collins had said, the thing that really surprised me was that Earth projected an air of fragility. And why? I don't know. I don't know to this day. I had a feeling it's tiny, it's shiny, and it's beautiful. It's home and it's fragile. So we know for a fact that the first few minutes of being outside the atmosphere change you as a person. And we're going to discuss further how exactly that does. All right, so organizers, please monitor the chat. I would like you to vote on this. When do you think we first started keeping track of astronaut mental health? Was it in the 1950s? Was it in the 1960s? In the 70s? In the 80s? Or in the 90s? If you can please let me know if everything that's coming in. You can just type in the chat A through E, whichever one you think is appropriate.
Okay, we have one chat as D.
D, okay. All right, okay. All right, well, you would have guessed that through the Gemini and Mercury programs, for example, that the capsules were teeny tiny, and people spent in such a close space a very long time of 7, sometimes 14 days, just orbiting around the Earth, that when they would come down, somebody would ask them, hey, how was it? How are you feeling? Are you feeling okay? And not how are you feeling physically, but how's your mental health? I mean, are you still able to go back to your daily activities? Turns out nobody thought of keeping a track record until 1991. So nothing that we have from the previous programs covers mental health. I find that extremely surprising. Nevertheless, in the 1990s, we started to have some journals that those were kept by the astronauts. And I can show you this graph here, which was published by NASA a few years back. So you have the different shades of gray correspond to quarters of their mission. So regardless of how long their mission is, it was divided into 4 quarters. And then we have categories or keywords, if you will, of journal entries. So how often, for example, did astronauts think about home? Well, truth is, all throughout, they were thinking about home all the time. And it's not complicated, right? You look around, you look outside the window and you see it right there. So that makes perfect sense. Um, Something interesting is that at the very beginning, the first quarter, they have a low morale, whereas after that, they're they perk up and they feel very happy to be working on something significant, for example, or working with their crewmates. So they adjust to that. Then you can, for example, think about the beauty and wonderment and overview effect that we're talking about before. It's interesting that at the beginning of the mission, there are a lot more entries than in the end. They're more like, okay, I've seen this enough now. I'm ready to go home. It's like, okay, enough with the overview effect. So it's interesting how when we break down the keywords through their journal entries, we can see what they talk about and therefore what's important to them. Now, what does it really mean to be in space? There's a lot of things that we already know, right? So we have ionizing radiation in space, which we do not on the surface of the Earth. It can be coming from within our solar system, it can be galactic, or it can even be cosmic. And then there's microgravity, which is basically 38% of Earth's gravity, approximately. But it's not just about the physical environment, it's also the fact that we're away from family and friends, which are our usual support system. We are with strangers or colleagues for extended periods of time, confined in a small space. And how does the physical um, reflect on team function? You might say it's an extrapolation, but hear me out and let's see the step by step here. Let's say we're exposed to radiation. There's the solar flare. We're on the ISS. There's this solar flare. An extreme wave of proton come in. We're not well protected, which we're going to talk about in a second. And this will actually affect our central nervous system functioning, which will in turn then, for example, meddle with our circadian rhythm, our chronobiology. And if our sleep is affected, well, then we wake up the next morning quite grumpy because we haven't slept enough, which means our behavioral health is not correct towards our teammates. And therefore, our performance is subpar. Um, so how does this affect the team? Well, excuse me, it does because it affects the team dynamics. If one person doesn't do their job, somebody else will have to do it to cover for them, and that will make them grumpy and unhappy and extremely tired. So you see how a physical condition can lead to team dynamic changes. All right, your turn again. Which system in our body can influence our mood, regardless of whether you're in space or on Earth? The MSK system, the immune system, the endocrinal, digestive, or all of the above? Let's see what you vote. Organizers, let me know what's coming in. Organizers.
Yeah, that people are yet to type. They're typing.
Okay, no problem. We can guess together that it's all of the above. Everything in our body actually is influenced by our environment and therefore can influence also our mood. So just to cover a very high level, when we're talking about our muscles and our bones, we know for a fact that there's weakness and bone mass loss due to microgravity. When it comes to the immune system, bone marrow and thymus get affected, and we are more prone to microbial attacks, and some pathogens actually take advantage of our low immune system, and we end up having real issues in space. Now, endocrine system, our hormone levels are altered. Like, for example, we know for a fact cortisol levels change, and they also change at the times during the day. So our chronobiology changes. Neuroendocrinal, like our serotonin levels, and genitourinary as well. Urinary tract infections are quite known. Then we can talk about kidney stones and prostatitis, etc. So there's really not a single system that's not affected by space conditions. All right, so what has been recorded until today? We can classify mood changes into three categories: adjustment disorders, somatoform disorders, or mood disorders. So adjustment disorders can manifest as having anxiety, having issues problem solving, or even having some lacks of memory impairment. Somatoform disorders, on the other hand, are manifested like a psychalgia, false symptoms, extensive fatigue. So where basically your mood manifests itself through the physical body. And then mood disorders, depressions, mania depressions, schizophrenias, even psychotic thoughts disorders. All right, so can you please tell me, is it all negative? And can you think of anything that can be improved in one's character in space conditions? So is there anything that we can basically improve in space? Organizers, I might go ahead. Is that, can you see anything coming in, or shall I go ahead?
Um, I don't see anything here.
Okay, no
Yeah.
worries. All right, so let's talk about this. It's not just about negative things, it's also about positive things. Space can have a positive impact on our mental health. There's this sense of a salutogenesis, meaning that the feelings of fortitude, perseverance, self growth, ingenuity, camaraderie. And ironically, compared to, in contrast, basically to the previous slide, we can even see decreased depression sometimes. So it's not really all about negative things. It's also about positive things too. Um, People go into the cupola, like the spot right here, to look outside the window, and that might make them feel so majestic that they feel like they can do anything in the world. That their self-confidence goes up, that their growth increases, their self-growth increases, and also being contained in such a small space with people they don't know, but doing such a noble mission, one might say, increases the sense of team and camaraderie, right? All right, so as we haven't been in deep space missions, what animal models can we use to examine the effects of long-term deep space travels? So we haven't been in deep space missions as humans. What animal models can we simulate with to extract some data that might be similar to us? Do we have anything coming in, organizers?
Well, I guess we can utilize um, something like a mouse, because
Very
most of the time
mouse.
scientists do experiment on mouses.
Okay, very good, very good. Actually, I will correct you on mice. It's rats. Um, Mice are great to work with in space for other models, like endocrine system, like cortisol levels, for example, or even sometimes for gestation, if we want to understand how pregnancy works on the ISS and in space, basically, we can use mice. However, for mental health, rat models are ideal. And why is that? It's because for two main reasons. They form societies, real structured hierarchies of societies. Some, and they actually have the same sociological rules as humans, meaning that they have friends, they have acquaintances, and they even have individuals they just don't like to mess with. So, because of these dynamics, we're capable of testing the model out. And here are a few, this is a summary of a very long list of papers, but it's interesting to see that dopamine, just after 7 days of putting rats in space conditions, dopamine is reduced in their brains, which actually leads to catatonia just in 2 weeks. And then cortical perfusion decrease in 2 weeks, which cortical perfusion basically corresponds to how you're being able to make decisions and respond to stimuli and the flight or fight response as well, and everything that comes into making your brain work, basically. There's also a pH change in 2 weeks, which changes everything throughout your body. And then, of course, there were several studies that biomarkers were studied, like citric acid and dopa and creatinine and even others, to be able to detect the levels within the brain of how we're feeling and what the impact is from the conditions. So, really interesting. If you were to extrapolate this on humans, the results would not be very positive and happy. Think about us wanting to go to Mars, for example, which takes about 6.5 to 7 months to get there. Then that amount to come back. And of course, you're not only going to take a selfie, right? You're going to stay there to work for some time. So if we're looking between a 3 to 5 year mission, think about how heavy that might be, and think about the road to Mars, what the number one problem would be. The number one problem for humans would be boredom, because as humans we need to be stimulated. We need to have visual stimuli. We need to look outside the window and see things happening out there. And just seeing the blackness of space, even though it might be wondrous for the first couple of weeks, maybe even a month, what are you going to do with the rest 5 to 6 months? And trust me, it's not enough to just put a ping pong table into the capsule. You actually need to address each individual's interests in order to make it um, stimulating enough so as not to end up depressed, really. And so, does it end with the mission? No, it does not. It's also what happens afterwards when you come back to Earth. Behavioral and mental issues from space, they linger, they stay with you. And it's mainly because you have a shock that your roles are changing. All of a sudden, you're doing this incredible, noble humanity thing. And then you have to go back to commuting to get coffee in the morning. So actually, Christina Kaw has described this quite nicely. At this particular time, you just have to start letting go. It's time to move on, and you can't hold on to the role that you had. So don't even try. Instead, take comfort in knowing that you did a good job and that it's time to come home. You need to realize that you need to separate, compartmentalize basically your job and however noble or great or rare it is, um, versus actually being a normal human being and accepting your needs in your everyday life on Earth. All right, so again, your turn, but we can discuss together. How many do you think is an ideal crew size? Is it one person, two people, three, four, or the more the merrier? Organizers, please let me know what's coming in.
Yes. Uh, um, I will give my opinion. Okay, there is one which says D. Two people are saying D. Four,
Okay.
three people are saying D.
Okay, great. Four people.
Okay, so there is one more that says 3 to 4.
I love that. Maybe they know the paper I'm going to talk about. Okay, so crew size. It's interesting to see that deviance rates, and I'll tell you what I'm talking about, were highest for crews of 3. And this is a paper from 2005, so it's quite a while now. But it's super interesting and still stays relevant. What do I mean by deviance rates? Puzzling behavior like withdrawal, staying to oneself, acts of violence, verbal or physical. Um, Why? Because there's 2 plus 1 usually. The two befriend each other, and the third withdraws and is violent towards the other two. And then there's also the acts of deliberation, such as hoarding resources. What do I mean by that? You know that there's a capsule going up onto the ISS every once in a while packed with food and supplies. And in that food, there might also be some chocolate bars or those, that ice cream that we've all had from NASA. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. And that third person who's by him herself tends to take all the chocolate to themselves, and to basically hoard whatever is best, and leave the rest to the other people to share. Now, interestingly enough, when the crew size increases just by one person, increases to 4, there is an apparent significant decrease in the amount of deviant behavior. So it's quite interesting to see that how team dynamics work and how the impact of those team dynamics and whatever we learn from them are going to be useful in space. So how do we choose our crew? There's an extensive series of personality tests that are being tested out and used, actually, not just tested out, used right now by all the big agencies, space agencies around the world. And why do we use those? Because we're trying to find traits, personality traits that are going to fill in the gap that we need for a particular mission and a particular crew. So I might need the main engineer, for example. Let's say we're looking to fill the role of main engineer. That will be different going on a research mission to the moon. That will be different by going, if we're looking to go on Mars to actually build a habitat. Um, that way, we actually, by monitoring traits of candidates, we can tell who's most appropriate for each role. The individuals have to be independent, have to be able to work alone, but also need to be able to collaborate well with others. They need to be able to handle conflict well, deal well with space conditions, and I'm not talking physically here, I'm talking mental. Like, for example, not have a problem with being confined into tiny spaces over long periods of time, pass both their physical and psychological exams, and above all, be team players. It's really, really important for crew selection that we choose people who are able to deal with conflict well, who are able to mitigate situations and even be pacifists when things get heated within a group. All right, so to conclude, space conditions do present a new challenge that we have not been thinking about so much in the past. What do we need to do? Well, we need to incorporate more psychologists and psychiatrists into the game. We need to conduct more studies to obtain more results, perform personality tests to select the crew, stress the importance of psychological interview, which is very important, and I'll be more than happy to discuss and open now the floor to questions and maybe, why not, a nice discussion. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vanessa. You really discussed very crucial points for having a mental fitness in space travel. And recently, when Artemis 1 went off and they clicked some photos from far away from the moon, when you look at the vastness between the space, like the space between Earth and the moon, it literally gets you in, it hits you in the brain that if you travel that much distance alone, you're definitely going to get some brain hemorrhage or something like that. It's definitely
Of
going to
course.
affect you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, think even about the absence of colors, right?
Yeah, right,
Um, it's um, it's something that when you're so used to seeing objects around you in your everyday life, that's stimulating to your retina, therefore stimulating to your brain. But just seeing shades of gray, um, if not completely black and white, the further we go, it's shocking. It's very, very shocking. We're not made for that.
right. I would request audience members to put your questions in chat, or you can use raise your hand option to interact with the speaker. Um, Also, one more thing, our chief mentor, Dr. Ravi, is here.
Who's that? Sorry.
Dr. Ravi Margasayam. He is our
Oh,
chief mentor.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Hello there.
Yeah, hi. uh, yeah, I just came a little bit late. Really
No problem.
appreciate and thanks for coming.
Thank
And
you.
it's been a great pleasure for me to work at NASA Kennedy Space Center with many astronauts and build the International Space Station. And now it's been sort of people living and working in space was really very interesting uh, uh, area for me. I also was a GSRP chairman, co-chair to send 400 payloads and stuff like that to ISS. So from Japanese mice to AMS, but I think you touched upon one really important thing. It was team players, being team players, and always talk to my team here at NSS Mumbai. Because I've been trained by Pamela Melroy. Actually, if you know Pamela Melroy, she is the deputy administrator of NASA right now, and she gave me my silver Snoopy in '96, and
Oh,
we have been,
congratulations.
yeah. So she's been mentoring me, sort of babying me, and put me to the task of promoting NASA globally. So it's really nice to you talk about team dynamics and team player. It's very, very important aspect of what we do, not only on Earth, but also in space. So really, I'm heartfelt thanks to you for coming today and helping some of the students around the world, benefit from your expertise, knowledge, experience, and education. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Doctor. It will be a pleasure to connect and talk maybe offline about your experiences.
Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Ravi. Um, you guys were discussing something about Apollo mission, like when three astronauts went to the moon and how it affected their mental health. I just had a comment on that. Like we humans, we always talk that whenever we are alone, we think about thousand different things. Like it can be anything from good to bad, and it's like a sine wave. It is not always good. It's not always like we don't always feel good. We don't always feel low. So at times when we are feeling low, we need other humans to be around us so that we can talk with them and take that graph back to normal, bring that back to normal. So it is also a very important aspect of maintaining mental health. That's why we say that, like, of course, more is not always merrier for space crew missions because, of course, we need to see the weight and all, but definitely four people will be important to be put up together so that they can talk amongst each other, and maintaining mental health in that way is really important.
Absolutely. Priyo, if I may, I need to say that um, you need to add to what you said the aspect of the people that are with you are not your people. That means that if you don't have your best friend in the world around, you're not, I mean, think about your everyday life. How are you going to talk to Dr. Ravi, for example, versus your colleague? There's a difference of your wording, of what words you are allowed to use. There's a difference of the filter that you're going to establish, and also a difference in the range of topics that you can cover. I mean, if you're experiencing something extremely personal, you need to test the waters on whether you can actually share that with your crewmate and colleague. Turns out you can, because when you're free floating in space in the middle of nowhere, um, yeah, you're going to talk to them about anything as if they were worse than your best friend. That's why they come back, and there's this camaraderie among astronauts, because they're the only ones that they can support each other. But don't think about it as obvious, and that is why especially because cultural aspects come into it as well. Some cultures are easier to open up to, um, like Greeks, for example. I know for a fact that we're very loud and easygoing people. There's other countries that are more difficult to open up to. There's protocol that you need to follow. There's cultural sensitivity that you need to follow. So that is why during their 5, 10 to whatever years of training, um, they have already established the crew so that they train them together so that they experience the pain, if you will, together, which becomes a shared experience in the sense to create some common memories together. And when you have those common memories together, you actually manage to open up. So we're a complex species, right? We're not just about, do we have people around us or not? It's also about which people we have around us. And that's why we use personality tests to figure out who will be compatible with X personality. Because if I don't find that particular Y personality that will match my X, forget about the mission. The mission's going to be completely destroyed in the middle. While we're doing something important, the whole of humanity depends, and billions of dollars are being invested from taxpayers' money. We cannot depend on the success of the mission on some petty little problem that X has with Y. And trust me, maybe Dr. Avi can tell you about it. There are so many examples that we know, and of course, NASA does not wish to publish those, but I can tell you for the fact there's so many examples where things have gone wrong among astronauts. And with every cohort and every solicitation, we try to make personality tests and interviews more and more difficult so that we make sure we get people that are not going to have petty little problems while working on billion-dollar projects. So, yeah.
Thanks for
just a few things to consider, Priyal. Yeah.
It's really important. I totally agree with you. Like the relation you share with different people and like what you can discuss with them, and of course the people's cultural differences. It's a major thing because been we have been living in those cultures for years, and if we expect that it can be changed within 1 or 2 years while we are in space, it's not something we should consider on $1 billion project, of course. So yeah, I totally agree with you. There's
Absolutely.
one more thing I was thinking, that if are they also trained with leadership qualities, all of the crew members, or there just one person who is relied more with leadership qualities? Because somehow if anything happens, like someone got into a dispute or they're having something that we should do this in moment of crisis, some people are not able to cope with that at the same moment, and they cannot come up with instant solutions. So do they train them with those
What a brilliant question. I applaud you. Here's the interesting thing. Leadership, if it's viewed correctly in the sense of not being a boss but a leader, if you know the difference from business-wise, means that you are also able to be a good follower. A good leader is also a good follower. Through the independence of the tasks that each selected astronaut has to perform during their training, they're given this independence and this capability to become a leader of their own projects, to be able to do something by themselves. As within the team, there are some experiential teachings according to the role of the mission they're going to do. Because, for example, let's take NASA. You have the cohort, for example, the one that was selected last December, right, of 10 people. And those people are starting to learn everything from the basics, how to screw a screw on the ISS, which, by the way, is very complicated and is not an easy task. However, when they get selected for a particular mission, a new set of training starts. So they have learned the basics, but then they start a new sort of training, which is specifically made for the mission. specifically made for each individual's role. We know what the role of each individual will be. Out of the 10, we're going to select 4, for example, for mission X. For that mission X, individual A is going to have to be the lead engineer. In this case, we might need person B to be the medical officer. So for each basically role, we teach the entire team how to accept the leadership of them. Meaning that if I have an engineering problem, the leader of the team is going to be, oh, we lost Priyal, I'm sorry. If we had a problem with engineering, our main first leader when we have a problem, an engineering problem, will be with the engineer. He's going to be the one who leads us. If somebody has some trauma or an accident and we have a medical emergency, then the leader, hi Priyo, then the leader is going to be the doctor. So we teach during the mission specific training according to what we know that's going to happen, for the entire team to respect each leadership, because every individual is a leader, but in their own way. So if we have the commander, for example, the commander is going to be the leader for the entire team. That does not mean, however, that in the next mission, he's going to be the lead engineer and somebody else is going to be the commander. Not just because you were selected as commander, you're going to be commander for the rest of your life. We really don't want to do that because people get proud, and pride is very unexpected, right? So you make sure you give each individual a role that suits them, that they're trained for, but they're also teach the team to respect the particular leadership. So yes, but adapted, right?
Thanks for the answer.
Of
Yeah.
course.
So is there like we will also be in future, or and not just future actually, presently also, will we be training everyone not just individually, but also together, and not for their own particular roles, but also how to able to control each other's emotions, like how to give each other an emotional support when they are on a crewed mission, and how to maintain each other's mental health. It's not just about you, it's about everyone else too at the time.
That's what I was explaining, that it's experiential. Through the training, creating common memories, which might be very painful, very difficult mentally, very difficult physically. You're creating memories together. Therefore, you're building bridges together. And that's why the general training of the 10 astronauts is different from the training of the 4 selected astronauts to go on that particular mission, because the experiences that we're going to give them are going to be specific to the mission, and we're going to make sure that they cover each other. So just sitting them down in a classroom and say, okay, be emotional with each other, it's not going to work. What is going to work is putting them on the gyroscope or the vomit comet, whatever, and seeing each other struggle. That is going to create bonds. That's what's going to make people 10 years later, when they're on the surface of Mars and one of them is crying, to say, hey man, I got you. Remember when you had my back then? Now it's my turn. It's all good. I will do your job for you. Just go back to the habitat and I got this. This is how we train teams experientially. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
great to
just to
hear.
add extra thing for Priya and the audience, NASA also trains all these astronauts in very difficult environments. It's special training for survival. And when you do the survival training, you send 7 astronauts to remote jungles or remote wilderness.
Exactly.
And there, every day you rotate each person as a leader. So basically, everybody is a leader, but everybody is a follower. You got it. So every day of the week, you will have a different guy or girl leading the show, basically leading the group to go and finish the mission. So that's how NASA trains. So not only it's very important what Doctor was saying, but also it is very important, like something like in ISS, when I worked with Andy Thomas, who is an Australian astronaut, and I am half Australian, I guess, or part Australian. So he had a lot of incidences on Mir with fire and other things. And there is a lot of fear, and also communication is very important. And I just want to put a question to Doctor. I looked at your bio, and you have 18 different languages you speak. So I'm jealous, really, because I speak about 10 maybe, or understand 10 Indian languages. So,
Oh, wow.
and
That
maybe a
is
little bit Arabic.
wonderful.
I was fluent in Burmese and Pashto, and I've forgotten all that right now. But very important question for you. How does language and fear and also this communication, because you know the language, you can communicate, and then it affects fear. Like somebody like Andy Thomas being stuck in the mirror and having fire, but then he has to communicate with the Russians to get him out. So, what do you think about role playing when it comes to language? I'll tell you why I'm asking this question for the benefit of everybody. Because the more languages I learn, I have been successful in life. But also, more importantly, I have compassion towards, like, I speak Marathi, which is the local language in Mumbai, and Prathamesh, and a lot of people here, I'm sure they all speak Marathi. And so I feel very compassionate towards them, because I speak their language. So please, give us some ideas about what do you think
I
when it comes to
completely
astronauts.
understand. And that, what a solid question. I was not expecting anything less from you, Doctor. Now, here's the thing. There's a line you can draw between what you have and what you want. What do I mean by that? There's 20 plus thousand people that apply to become an astronaut at every cohort at NASA. Out of those 20,000, you're going to have, okay, the ones that do it for fun, that are already eliminated, that woke up one morning and said, why not? But then when you narrow it down to the ones that are really, really worth it, you might end up with about 1,700. Out of those 1,700, you're going to have the ones that have not just one STEM degree like NASA wants, but are going to have maybe even a PhD, maybe even some postgraduate work, research papers. Maybe some are going to be high-ranked military. Maybe some are going to have extreme environment experiences. And then there's those who are multidisciplinary, who are those who are going to have the military experience, who are going to have several STEM degrees, who are going to have published, who are going to have worked in industry and in academia and in research and in medicine and in engineering. Those are the people that you're trying to extract. Those are the people that you're trying to get. Why? And why am I saying this? Because it gets to a point where you're going to have a single individual to do everything. And the more open you are to speaking the industry languages, the industry language of engineering, the industry language of medicine, the industry language of science, the industry language of business, the industry language of financial markets, I don't know, the more capable you are to adapt yourself into every situation. And that's exactly the people that we want to represent humanity, basically. To that extent, the moment that we speak more languages, in this case, it is the more the merrier, refer back to the question, the moment we speak more languages, we're also able to communicate with the maximum amount. Why? Because the moment you learn a language, and doctor, you will know this, you're becoming susceptible, you're opening a part of your brain to get taught the culture of the language, to get taught the humor of the language, to get taught what is allowed and not allowed to be said. I mean, why are there so many words in Russian to describe snow and so many words in Hawaiian to describe waves? Because people have a different environment. And in order to be able to understand that, you need to be multidisciplinary. You have to, especially when you're going to represent humanity in space. So I will absolutely say yes, you have to know languages, not just because, oh, there might be, I might have to speak, okay, you have to speak Russian because it's a collaboration and we have signed papers for that. But not just because you have to, but because your Russian colleague has a sense of humor and a mentality that is completely different from you. You don't have to speak Japanese just to be able to say hi to your Naponaut colleague, but because you're going to fully understand their sense of being, how they were brought up. And when things get really strenuous and difficult, that's what it comes down to. How are you going to communicate with the other person? If I am about to say, hey man, I can't do this, I can't do this, I need your help. Is this something, how am I going to ask for help from the other person? If I'm allowed to ask for help from someone so bluntly, will it be culturally sensitive for them? I mean, anything from asking for help to dealing with conflict. If I feel like I really need to yell because I'm angry and it's a valid emotion, I am allowed to do that to my American colleague? Am I allowed to do that to my Russian colleague? Because what I do on the ISS will also have an impact on Earth. What if I start World War III just because I got angry because he left a drawer open or something? So being culturally sensitive is really, really important. Really, really important. And to be able to have that cultural sensitivity, I think the best way is to open yourself to learn more languages. So I absolutely agree and say yes.
Yeah. Great answer. Great answer. Really, that's what I was looking for, because I'm a big proponent of four things. I can mention it to you after being at NASA for 30 years. Obviously, always find in your failures the root cause analysis. Second thing, be a systems engineer or a systems proponent where you understand the big picture. Third is the multidisciplinary aspect of your life. You know, you brilliantly mentioned about not only languages, but also the language of finance and language of engineering, which is very, very critical. One of my heroes is Bill MacArthur, Billy Mac, as you know him, who was the chief of ISS and chief of space shuttle program. He was also my mentor. and my boss actually. And so really, it's a great answer, which I was looking for. And in addition to that, I just want to throw in one thing. So maybe traveling around the world, because I'm a big travel buff and I've traveled to many countries, which helps me to understand the people, the culture, as well as maybe learn few languages here and there, to say hello in many languages or thank you in many languages. And you're right, we need multidisciplinary people. And I keep on stressing with NSS that hey guys, we need to be multidisciplinary. And so thank you for that answer. Excellent, brilliant answer. And I think you took a good time to explain to these students or kids, I call them. I'm pretty old, so thank you again. Thank you.
Of course, my pleasure. Do we have any other questions that we can cover?
Yeah, there is one question that's been waiting for quite a while.
Oh,
So,
I'm sorry. Hi.
uh, so the question is, in your opinion, how feasible are the benefits of altered states of mind and consciousness, in bracket that is the torpor, the sedation, and the psychedelics, in the scope of deep space exploration?
I missed a couple of the words there. Um,
So,
how, in
Can you
my
repeat the
opinion,
question?
which ones? What is useful
it,
for mental health?
how feasible are the benefits of altered states of mind and consciousness? That
Altered
is,
state, mind, and consciousness. See, and that is the exact question that I would only get from somebody from India. Okay, I mean, I would never get asked that anywhere else on the planet. Maybe Tibet, I don't know. Maybe maybe some other place on that side of Asia. So thank you so much for that question. Um, Truth is that as we're moving forward right now, we are looking into alternative than pharmacological, Western pharmacological sources, because it's quite heavy to transport. It's very heavy to transport medications that are going to cover a mission of 6 months, for example. And if it's the ISS, it's not that bad because we can send up every once in a while a capsule with resources to stock up. But if you're going to travel far away, like for 7 months to go to Mars, then you need to make sure they're taking their entire stock with them. And that's extremely heavy and therefore extremely expensive. So it has been proposed, and there's several groups working on that, on trying to figure out alternative methods. So I'm not going to go to psychedelics because those are also physical things that are going to be heavy to carry out. But I'm going to go to things like meditation, things like altered state of consciousness, things like physical exercises that influence your mind. Yoga is a very big aspect that is being looked at, and that is not new among astronauts. That's something that's been there for a few decades already. So it has to do with teaching, basically giving the tools to the astronauts to cure themselves or to cure each other, if that makes sense. So we're definitely not going to be drugging them to feel altered state of consciousness by giving them LSD or something like that. That would be detrimental to the project and to humanity. Excuse me, because you really don't know what's going to happen. You cannot control the individual anymore. It's not the astronaut you trained, it's somebody else. However, trying to mitigate issues and mental health issues through pathways that are non-pharmacological are definitely options that we're looking into. Why not, while your colleague is having an anxiety, a panic attack on the surface of Mars, make sure you by force carry them back to the habitat, take off parts of their, I guess, of their suit so that they're able to breathe, to oxygenate properly their brain, and then force them to do some breathing techniques. And as soon as they're calm and they get out of their suit, maybe do some yoga poses. Why not make sure we have something with us that, maybe a bath, a sound bath, that kind of thing. Something that will transport you, something that will make you see yourself differently so that you calm your physical body down. So we're absolutely open to that, and I see it happening. It's the fashionable thing to talk about for astronauts these days. But psychedelics and alternative pills are, are obviously an option, but they're causing the same problem. We're going to have to transport it, and that's really, really expensive. And I don't think we can do that right now as is. It will take several $1 million to be able to transport something as heavy as the supply for 4 astronauts for 6 months. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay, so we cannot just play with that. We have to be mindful. So what if some of that percentage, at least, we could replace with other techniques that we could teach the astronauts? Yeah. And not to play on stereotypes, but that was a very Indian question. And that's exactly why, that is exactly why we have to be mindful and understand the mentality. I understand why I was asked this question here. Because I might or might not have been learning some Hindi and some Punjabi. But oh God, don't ask me about what do you speak in Mumbai?
Marathi.
What did you say?
Marathi.
Paraki. Oh yes. Oh gosh. No. Not there yet. Definitely not there yet.
We'll teach you how to read and write.
Yes, that's the only thing I can do to the moment. I might not know what I'm reading, but I can read. Still a beginner.
I had a question. So, what do you think about the civilian astronauts program that is going on? So, like, they are not trained at the
Which astronaut
extremes.
program? Sorry, I really can't hear
So
you
sorry.
well.
The civilian astronaut programs, the private companies are bringing up. So they are sending civilians to space without proper training, as the actual astronauts get, like having the mental state of mind stable and strong enough to withstand any panic attacks. So um, if in near future, if we start to send them to moon or moon base, do you think it is is it something that we should avoid doing that, or should we also consider civilian astronauts to go to moon base or far away to Mars?
That is a sore spot for me. So thank you for that question. Let me explain why. Because I have nothing against civilian programs or private companies. On the contrary, thank goodness we have them. Otherwise, we wouldn't be advancing right now. It all depends on the administration and how much money the administration is willing to give us. So that takes a while. Look at the Artemis 1. It went up and down that runway like the best fashion model. So the thing is that what we have right now is space tourism privately, okay, as is, regardless of what they want to be called. They're tourists, they're passengers. Thing is that when you go up for about 4 minutes, you only get a glimpse of the salutogenesis, of the positive thing we were talking about, the list of positive things. So mentally, physically, I absolutely agree, hands down, we should be doing something, because 4 minutes of some sort of exposure will definitely have impact on the long term. And we're not talking about it enough. And we're not doing anything about it. We can't just shoot people up and hope they're okay. However, here's the thing. Mentally, we're not that concerned for the 4 minutes. I mean, that being said, a traumatic experience might only take 30 seconds, but we're assuming the fact that you actually want to be on that capsule, you paid for it, probably a lot of money, and therefore you're going in a positive mindset, and you even did the little training they give you. So not very concerned about those 4 space tourism minutes. When it comes to what's being built right now to make astronauts like the Inspiration 4 crew, for example, that wasn't really trained as NASA astronauts. They only did a mini training, really. And nevertheless, they were, going around the Earth for about 2.5 weeks. So it was quite a bit. I mean, you can talk about exposures, you can talk about microgravity, you can talk about being comprised in a small space, colleagues versus friends, the whole thing. Plus, they didn't even have time to bond and meet. They bonded during the experience. That is a different question. And this is Vanessa's opinion, because we don't actually have done anything about it. I think that there's definitely room for improvement. There's not much being done right now, and there should be more done. NASA has built, for better or for worse, a very concrete, big, solid program of astronaut selection and astronaut training that, from what we know until now, is bulletproof. And of course, until a bullet comes through and then we bulletproof it again. But it gets updated. So right now, the selection is the state of the art that we have. Whereas private companies are looking for other things. It's very positive that they're looking for other things as well, because they're more open to the multidisciplinary things that we were talking about before. They don't look to satisfy an algorithm, an internal algorithm. They actually are looking at the individuals. So that's interesting. I don't know personally, again, opinion as Vanessa, whether somebody who has a lot of followers on social media is the right criterion to be selected. Maybe for the 4 minutes, probably, because we do need awareness to raise awareness for space. But for an actual 6-month mission, not so sure. And NASA definitely agrees. Now, private companies have opened so much to anybody, somebody who can pay for the training, somebody who can pay for the ticket, somebody who can contribute to the science as a hobby rather than an actual job. So there's a lot of contradicting and debatable things that are happening right now for crew selection there. But yes, in the future, I think that we should definitely be excuse me, we should definitely be looking into improving the selection in private companies anyway.
Yeah, because the recent Dear Moon project for the crew they have selected, I guess people are very contradicting towards the crew that has been selected. Like there is a TJ producer, and then there are many actors as well as other people around the globe, and then but still they say that the majority of the people who are from US only and not diversified. I guess she is stuck. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Hi.
Yeah. Can you see us?
Yes, I can. I think we were interrupted.
Yeah, it was about like the good example will be the Deviant project. People are trashing it down slowly.
Yeah, no, of course, of course. I don't want to take too much of your time either. I mean, but I'm very much enjoying the conversation. So if there's anything else you'd like to ask me, please.
We don't have any questions as such, so probably we can just adjourn the session for today.
Very well. And if there's any needs whatsoever, here, I'll put my personal email in the chat. And if there's anybody that has any burning space medicine questions, I would be more than happy to chat. As you can see, when you ask me questions, it's very difficult to stop talking. So I really love this topic.
Dr. V, there is
Yeah.
I think 14-year-old girl in Bangalore, India, and she wants to do space medicine as her, expertise in the long run. And maybe if you don't mind, I'll give your email to her to ask some questions so you can tell her. And she calls it spedicine. Space and medicine combines. She calls it spedicine, and she wants to do
Citizen.
spedicine. So
I
she's
love that.
very, interested in that. And so maybe I'll ask her to ask you a few questions.
Please,
if you don't
absolutely.
mind. Yeah. So
I'm
really,
always
I want
happy
her
to
to
do
grow
that.
into this area. Yeah.
Always happy to do that.
Yeah. If you come to Florida, let us know. And, hopefully we can meet at Kennedy or whatever.
6, 7, 8 times a year. I'm there all the time. So no problem. With pleasure.
Okay. Thanks again for, you are part of NSS already. So nothing new there, but I'm just very happy that we all connected today, and that there is a lot of interest in this area of space medicine. I think that's the future. And I think it will benefit, as we say on the ISS, of the Earth for the Earth. So we are doing research experiments like mice and stuff like that on space, fruit flies, many things which will benefit Earth. So of the Earth for the Earth. And good luck to you, all, your ventures. I think you are going to be the first astronaut from Greece. So I launched the first Indian woman to space, the first Indian astronaut, Kalpana Chawla. So maybe I'll get you, get you in a chance to launch you in space.
I would trust you with that.
Thank you.
And that's the biggest honor I can give anybody, I think.
Thank you. Well, I have 100 launches under my belt, so no problem. I'll make sure you go up safely and come back. Reliably and come back safely.
My mother would certainly be happy to hear that. Thank you. Thank you, doctor. It was very nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you, Dr. B. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vanessa. And I guess we'll see you again with a new topic and continue the discussion for space medicine and mental health in space.
Please, absolutely. With great pleasure.
I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
And to all of you, happy holidays too.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Happy
Bye.
holidays to everybody.
Holidays, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.